History is written by the victors, but what if the victors were also expert liars? Today, we're diving headfirst into 13 historical truths that are nothing more than polished propaganda. Get ready to question everything they taught you in school. 1. You know that awkward moment when you sneeze in public and someone shouts "bless you"? Cute, right? Socially polite? Kinda sweet? Yeah, well, in medieval Europe, that "bless you" wasn't about courtesy. It was about soul retention. Like, oops. Your immortal essence almost flew out through your nose. Better seal that spiritual exit with a verbal band-aid. Let's unpack the myth. Medieval people believed sneezing could literally launch your soul into the atmosphere like a booger rocket. Wait, they thought what? Yep. For real. In the Middle Ages, sneezing was terrifying. Not because of germs, they hadn't discovered those yet, but because they thought a good sneeze could make your soul eat itself out of your body. Achoo equals exorcism light. So what did they do about it? They invented a failsafe, "God bless you," said immediately after someone sneezed, like you were a spiritual goalie trying to block a soul from being kidnapped by demons. This was less about manners and more about preventing a metaphysical drive-by. Think of it as ancient antivirus software, but for your eternal spirit and launched through someone's nose. Why did they believe this? Because back then, science was basically vibes and superstition in a trench coat. You had a cold? That was the devil trying to loosen your soul. You had allergies? Must be divine punishment for stealing your neighbor's goat. And remember, this was a world where doctors bled you out to cure headaches and prescribed mercury like it was a vitamin. These were not the people you trusted with your sneeze data. Pop culture analogy? This would be like going on WebMD today, sneezing once, and getting a message that says, "Warning, your soul has left the chat." Or like TikTok spiritual influencers claiming you can manifest a new identity by sneezing into crystals. Wait, they probably do that already. And the church? Oh, they love this idea. Nothing says we control your eternal fate like blessing you for involuntary nasal fireworks. It gave the church a kind of mystical TSA role. Nice sneeze. Shame if your soul got intercepted on its way out. They basically turned every allergy season into a spiritual battleground. Here's the ironic twist. This myth persisted for centuries. Even as people started understanding medicine and germs, "God bless you" stayed. So now, in 2025, we're still tossing out religious safety nets every time someone gets hit with a pepper sneeze. We've got vaccines, AI, and space telescopes. And yet we're still throwing holy words at airborne droplets like it's 1347. Iconic. So what did we learn? Sneezing was once considered a soul-threatening event. People genuinely believed your essence could be launched out of your nostrils like a metaphysical cannonball. And instead of solving the root cause, they just shouted spiritual catchphrases at it. So next time someone sneezes and you say "bless you," just know you're continuing a 1,400-year-old panic ritual for nose demons. 2. You ever look at a 3,000-year-old corpse and think, "You know what? I should absolutely grind that up and inhale it"? No? Well, congratulations, you're smarter than Victorian high society. Because back in the 1800s, people weren't just obsessed with mummies. They were snorting them, eating them, smearing them on their skin. All because they thought mummies had magical healing powers. Spoiler, they didn't. So what the actual embalmed hell happened here? During the Victorian era, anything exotic and vaguely ancient was instant wellness clout. Enter Egyptian mummies. To rich Europeans, mummies weren't sacred remains, they were basically crunchy granola supplements in linen. People believed mummy powder, yes, that's a real phrase, could cure headaches, internal bleeding, boredom, probably ghosts. Basically, if turmeric and cocaine had a morbid baby, it'd be Victorian mummy dust. Wait, they ate it? Oh yes. They ground up actual human remains, often from real tombs, not just your local graveyard, and used it like ancient kale. Apothecaries sold mumia, a powdered blend of dead person and grave dust, as medicine. Doctors prescribed it like Tylenol. Poets romanticized it. Even artists used mummy flesh in paint pigments. Imagine your oil painting being one organ short of a ritual sacrifice. And it gets grosser. Victorian elites also held mummy unwrapping parties. You'd get dressed up, attend a soiree, and casually peel apart a corpse like a historical piñata. All for entertainment. Pass the wine. Also, can someone hand me the femur? This was pre-Netflix, so apparently, disrespecting the dead in formal wear was prime content. Pop culture comparison? This is like if Goop sold Anubis cleanse capsules made from real mummies. And TikTok influencers were like, Day 3 of my Eat the Ancestors challenge, I'm feeling so spiritually aligned. But worse, because these were actual corpses, not rebranded dirt from a spa in Malibu. Why did they believe this? Well, a lot of confusion stemmed from the word mumia. Originally, it referred to a black tar-like substance used in embalming. But Europeans thought it meant the entire mummy. So they just rolled with it. Add in some ancient Egyptian mystique, colonial arrogance, and zero medical standards, boom, wellness apocalypse. Here's the ironic twist. While Victorians were snacking on pharaoh powder, actual Egyptians were horrified. Their ancestors were being turned into homeopathy. And you know what mummy dust didn't do? Cure anything. Unless your disease was not being deeply cursed yet. Eventually, medicine moved on to slightly less cannibalistic treatments. You know, like heroin and leeches. Progress? So what did we learn? Just because something is ancient doesn't mean you should grind it up and shove it up your nose. The Victorians turned sacred remains into snortable skincare and called it medicine. This wasn't healthcare. This was ritual desecration in a powdered jar. So next time someone says they're on a holistic cleanse, just ask. Cool. But like, is it certified mummy-free? 3. You think mint toothpaste is weird? Well, ancient Romans brushed their teeth with literal mouse brains. Yes. Mice. Crushed. Mashed. Smeared. All in the name of dental hygiene. Colgate? Nah. Caligula-gate. Let's rewind this disgusting dental ad. The Romans were obsessed with hygiene. Public baths. Fancy oils. Scented hair. But when it came to teeth, their solutions were, let's say, creative. One documented recipe, and no, I'm not joking, called for a paste made of crushed mouse brains, ground bones, ashes, sometimes urine, but we'll save that for another therapy session. All mashed into a tooth cleaning goo that sounds like it was developed by a deranged medieval Gordon Ramsay. Why mouse brains? Why anything's brains? Because Romans believed in sympathetic medicine, aka, if something looks like a part of the body, it'll help that part. Mouse brains equals small, soft, kinda like gums. Boom. Dental solution. That's the same logic as saying eating a walnut makes you smarter because it looks like a brain. Spoiler, it doesn't. But the Romans? They were vibe-based scientists. Pop culture analogy? This is like if Listerine dropped a new flavor called Rodent Radiance. Or Gwyneth Paltrow launched a Goop toothpaste made from fermented hamster thoughts and powdered amber. And people bought it. But did it work? Technically? Kinda. Some of the ingredients were mildly abrasive, so yes, they scraped off gunk. But at what cost? Mouse brains didn't fight cavities, they just made your breath smell like a haunted biology lab. And they didn't even have toothbrushes. People used chewed sticks or rags wrapped around a finger. So congrats, you just applied brain goo to your teeth with a twig. And this wasn't just poor folks. Rich Romans, the emperors, the philosophers, the upper crust were brain brushing like it was luxury spa treatment. Imagine Jeff Bezos paying $12,000 for a rat-based mouthwash and acting like it's peak innovation. Same energy. Here's the ironic twist. The Romans actually had shockingly good dental health. Not because of the brain paste, but because they didn't eat sugar bombs all day. No candy. No soda. No caramel lattes. Just wine, bread, and the occasional barbarian conquest. So ironically, they didn't need weird toothpaste, but still used it. That's like owning a Tesla and fueling it with Red Bull. So what did we learn? Romans were sophisticated until they weren't. They could engineer aqueducts, build the Colosseum, and then turn around and brush their teeth with mouseguts and optimism. Next time you complain about brushing for 2 minutes, just say, "At least I'm not exfoliating my molars with rodent stew." 4. You ever see a beaver and think, "Ah yes, clearly a fish. Look at that. Fur. No? Cool. You're officially smarter than 17th century theologians. Because back in the 1600s, the Catholic Church decided. Beavers? Totally fish. Slap 'em on the Lent menu. And suddenly, eating aquatic rodents became religiously acceptable. Because nothing says sacrifice and holiness like chewing on a tail that doubles as a canoe paddle. Let's unpack this. Lent, for the uninitiated, is that time in the Christian calendar when you're supposed to give up stuff, especially meat. But seafood was totally allowed. Why? Because fish weren't land animals. They didn't count. Also, fish were cheaper, smelled weird, and didn't scream when you caught them, probably helped the vibe. So naturally, people got creative. Enter the beaver loophole. Church scholars noticed something weird. Beavers swam like fish. Had tails kind of like fish. Lived in water like fish. Conclusion? They must be fish. Canonically. Theologically. Biblically. This was ecclesiastical gaslighting at its finest. Some clergy even argued that only the tail was fishy enough to qualify. So people just ate beaver tail steaks for Jesus and called it penance. Pop culture analogy? This is like saying, pizza is totally a vegetable because there's tomato sauce on it. Or, ice cream counts as hydration if it melts first. It's spiritual menu hacking from the OG life hackers, monks and bishops with suspicious appetites. And it wasn't just beavers. The church also ruled. Capybaras? Technically fish. Puffins? Also fish. Because they swim real good. It was like Noah's Ark had a secret sushi section. At this point, the Vatican was basically writing Pokemon-type matchups for God's grocery list. The ironic twist? This wasn't niche thinking. Whole countries accepted this. In parts of France, Canada, and South America, beaver meat became a fasting staple. Lenten BBQs were a thing. And nobody questioned it because hey, the bishop said it was cool. Beaver equals fish. Case closed. Did people know it wasn't actually true? Oh, 100%. Beavers have fur, teeth, and scream when startled. They build lodges, not reefs. But once something's blessed by bureaucracy and religion, good luck rolling it back. It's the 1600s. You can't just Google "is beaver pescatarian?" and call it a day. So what did we learn? People will twist logic into a pretzel when food's involved, especially during a fast. You can build cathedrals, translate the Bible, and enforce doctrine. But if someone really wants to eat a waterlogged mammal for dinner, they will find a loophole. So next time someone says, "I'm giving up meat for Lent," ask them, "Cool. But like, does that include aquatic rodents?" Just asking for theology reasons. 5. You know that awkward moment when you cry while chopping onions? Well, ancient Egyptians cried too, but not from the fumes. They were crying tears of reverence. Because to them, onions weren't just food, they were divine. Yeah. Divine onions. Sacred spheres of pungent holiness. All hail the allium. So what's the deal here? In ancient Egypt, onions were more than sandwich toppings. They were symbols of eternity. You heard that right, the humble onion was seen as a metaphor for the universe, the afterlife, and even the soul. Why? Because onions have layers. Multiple, circular layers. Just like the celestial cosmos in Shrek's emotional arc. What did this worship look like? They placed onions in pharaohs' tombs. They wore onion garlands in rituals. Priests used them in funeral ceremonies as spiritual deodorant. One mummy, Pharaoh Ramses IV, was found with onions stuffed in his eye sockets. Apparently, nothing says ready for the afterlife like going full Vidalia behind the eyelids. Pop culture analogy? Imagine going to church and the communion wafer is replaced with a funyun. Or temples handing out aromatherapy kits featuring onion. Or Gwyneth Paltrow releasing a sacred shallot candle. Okay, that one's probably coming next quarter. But why the obsession? The Egyptians were deeply symbolic. Circles equals life. Layers equals protection. Smell equals purification. And onions? Triple threat. They were round, multi-layered, and strong enough to knock a camel sideways with one whiff. Also, onions were medicinal, antiseptic, and didn't spoil easily, practical and mystical. Like the AirPods of produce. And it wasn't just peasants. High priests and nobles had literal onion offerings made at temples. These were tax-funded, officially blessed onions. Imagine your local IRS form including: how many shallots did you tithe to the gods this year? The ironic twist? The Greeks came along and said, onions? You guys worship sandwich toppings? And then they started slathering themselves in onions before the Olympics, believing it gave them strength. So basically, everyone was out here treating onions like a mystical pre-workout. Did the worship ever stop? Eventually, yes. Time moved on. New empires rose. But that spiritual onion aura lingered. Even today, in some Middle Eastern traditions, onions are used for protection, warding off evil, and blessing homes. So if your grandma hangs an onion over the door, she's not losing it, she's channeling 3,000 years of divine seasoning. So what did we learn? Sometimes, what looks like dinner is actually doctrine. The onion was a cosmic mirror, a religious tool, and apparently the original Egyptian air freshener. Next time someone says they're spiritually grounded, ask, yeah, but are you inner onion layer grounded? 6. You know how we always joke that billionaires will one day control the weather? Well, the US military tried it first. During the Cold War. With actual government funding. And zero chill. Literally. Introducing Project Popeye. Because nothing says geopolitical strategy like turning clouds into military assets. So wait, what were they trying to do? In the 1960s and 70s, US scientists attempted to make it rain on command. Not for crops, not for drought relief. But to flood enemy supply lines in Vietnam. Yeah. They weren't praying for peace, they were praying for mudslides. The idea. If we can control the monsoon, we can control the war. Basically, Call of Duty, meteorology ops. And how did it work? They used cloud seeding, spraying clouds with silver iodide to artificially trigger rain. Think of it like poking a cloud and saying, "Cry, you big fluffy coward." Did it work? Sort of. It rained harder in some areas. Roads turned to swamps. The Viet Cong got slowed down. Victory through puddle warfare. Pop culture analogy? Imagine if the Avengers fought Hydra by changing the forecast. Or if Dr. Doofenshmirtz built a Cloudinator 3000 and the Pentagon said, wait, that's actually brilliant. And yes, they kept it all top secret. Because weaponized drizzle doesn't exactly scream tough guy diplomacy. The code name? Make mud, not war. No joke. It sounds like a rejected Woodstock slogan, but it was a literal military operation. And they ran it for 5 years. Over 2,000 cloud-seeding flights. Imagine the government spending millions on weather manipulation while you're out here paying $9.99 for an umbrella. And then, the plot twist. When the story leaked in the 1970s, everyone was like, wait. We're doing what with the atmosphere? The backlash was real. Even the UN stepped in and said, okay, yeah, can we not turn Mother Nature into a war criminal? By 1978, they signed the Environmental Modification Convention, which banned using weather as a weapon. So now it's technically illegal to throw a hurricane at your enemies. Cool. Cool. But here's the kicker. Since then, countries have still researched weather control. For agriculture, climate mitigation, and maybe for less friendly purposes. Because once humans know they can poke clouds into obedience, you think they're gonna not mess with it? It's like giving a toddler a remote that controls rain. Eventually, someone's flooding the neighbor's sandbox. So what did we learn? The Cold War gave us nukes, spies, and weaponized thunderstorms. Because clearly, the best way to defeat communism was to ruin their laundry day. Next time it rains at your cookout, don't blame climate change. Blame a 1960s Air Force dude with a PhD and no weather app. So if someone asks, can humans really control the weather? Just say, yeah, and they tried to weaponize fog. We're not the good guys. 7. You've probably heard of those weird Silicon Valley guys who microdose baby blood and call it biohacking. But guess what? The Pope beat them to it. Like 500 years ago. Yep. In the 1490s, Pope Innocent VIII, actual leader of the Catholic Church, was allegedly served a refreshing beverage of fresh human blood in a desperate bid to stay alive. Spoiler alert. He didn't. Because vampire science was not FDA approved. Let's break it down. Pope Innocent VIII was old, dying, and grasping at whatever medieval medicine had left, which, at this point, was basically prayer, bleeding, leeches, and, apparently, teenager smoothies. Historical reports say he was given the blood of 3 young boys, meant to revive his energy and vitality. You know. Just normal Holy Father stuff. Was this a medical thing? Incredibly, yes. There was this wacky belief, especially in ancient and medieval medicine, that the life force of the young could rejuvenate the old. Basically, if you drink someone's essence, you steal their vitality. This wasn't just creepy. It was medically endorsed. It's like Dracula got tenure at a university. And the church was okay with this? Not exactly. This was highly controversial even at the time. The 3 boys reportedly died during the procedure, which, yeah, no kidding. So while the church was blessing wine and handing out communion wafers, the Pope was sipping hemoglobin like it was a wellness tonic. You thought religious scandal peaked in the 2000s? Try the bloody Renaissance. Pop culture analogy? Imagine if the Pope started a Goop-style brand called Blood of Christ, Real Edition. Or if Jeff Bezos announced he was launching Prime Vitality, sourced from unpaid interns. This is the intersection of religion, desperation, and very illegal science. The ironic twist? It didn't work. Pope Innocent VIII died immediately after the blood transfusions. No miracle. No sudden burst of youth. Just a very awkward funeral. And even better? He was succeeded by Pope Alexander VI, aka the Borgia Pope, one of the most notoriously corrupt popes in history. So not only did the blood drinking fail, it paved the way for the Netflix villain era of the papacy. Did this actually happen? Historians debate it. Some say it's apocryphal. Others say it's too specific in names, ages, and methods not to be rooted in truth. But either way, it reflects a real belief at the time. That youth could be stolen and bottled, like some kind of spiritual energy drink. That belief never really died. It just got rebranded as stem cell therapy. So what did we learn? Desperation makes people do wild, terrifying things. Even popes. The man charged with leading a billion souls tried to save his own with a medieval Red Cross cosplay. So next time someone tells you their anti-aging routine includes cold plunges and collagen powder, ask them. But does it include type O negative? 8. You think essential oils are overhyped? Wait till you hear about tobacco's golden era, when doctors in Elizabethan England were like, "You've got plague? Smoke it out. Got worms? Smoke 'em. Gunshot wound? Light. IT. Up." Yep, in the 1500s, people thought tobacco was a magical cure-all. Like the Swiss Army knife of medicine, if the knife was on fire and gave you lung disease. So how did this happen? After tobacco arrived in Europe from the Americas, people freaked out. It was exotic, buzzy, and most importantly, nobody understood how it worked. Which, of course, meant it had to be a miracle plant. Because back then, if something made your body feel weird, it either killed you or cured everything. And since tobacco made you dizzy but didn't immediately kill you, guess what? Cure. All. Confirmed. The list of things it supposedly cured? Headaches. Toothaches. Worms. Melancholy, aka clinical depression, but sadder. Bad breath. And, yes, gunshot wounds. Their logic? If you smoke it or shove it into the hole, the healing vapors will fix it from the inside. Tobacco, the OG vapor rub. Do not try this at home, Modern Warfare Edition. And it wasn't just puff puff pass. They used tobacco as an enema. Yeah. Let that image steep for a second. They literally built tobacco smoke enemas, devices that blew smoke up your butt. As a medical procedure. That's where the phrase blowing smoke up your ass comes from. I'm not kidding. This is not a joke. This is etymological hell. Pop culture comparison? Imagine if Dr. Oz did a TED Talk where he said, "You don't need surgery, just vape into the bullet hole." Or if someone on TikTok was like, "I cured my IBS with Marlboros and manifestation." And everyone was like, "She's glowing." Who pushed this idea? Literally everyone. Nobles, scholars, even King James I, at first. Medical books had entire chapters on how to treat with tobacco. It was so trendy, tobacco became currency in some places. You weren't just flexing wealth, you were flexing your health. Oh, this? It's not a cigarette. It's my anxiety meds, digestion booster, and holy protection stick. But, did it work? Obviously, no. It just numbed pain and made people feel funky, so they thought they were healed. And over time, people realized that maybe constantly coughing out black goo was not a detox. Even King James I flipped. He wrote a whole essay called A Counterblast to Tobacco. A royal roast where he called smoking loathsome to the eye, hateful to the nose, harmful to the brain, and dangerous to the lungs. Mic dropped. The ironic twist? Despite learning tobacco was horrible, the magic plant myth never really died. Centuries later, it got rebranded as cool, masculine, doctor-approved, and advertised by camels wearing sunglasses. We went from this cures wounds to this ruins lungs to this makes you look like James Dean. Full marketing circle. So what did we learn? People love a miracle cure even when it's on fire and smells like regret. Tobacco's rise as a medical miracle shows how quickly we'll turn literally anything into a life hack if the vibes are strong enough. So next time someone lights a cigarette and says, "It helps me think," you can say, "Yeah, that's what they said in 1588, right before sticking it in a gunshot wound." 9. You think kale gets a bad rap? Well, back in the Middle Ages, lettuce was feared like a fertility-destroying demon plant. That's right, medieval folks looked at a crispy head of romaine and said, "Better not." I'd like to keep my reproductive organs functioning. Because for centuries, Europeans believed that eating lettuce would make you infertile. Yep. Salad was basically contraception on a plate. How did this lettuce slander even start? Blame it on a mix of bad science, wild metaphors, and spicy opinions from old dudes in robes. According to medieval medicine, lettuce was considered cold and wet in temperament. And in the medieval worldview, cold equals lifeless. Which, apparently, equals no babies. Yes, they thought your libido ran on body heat. Cool foods equals cool emotions. So lettuce wasn't just bland, it was a soul freezer. Who was pushing this idea? Basically all the medieval wellness influencers, aka monks and philosophers. Big names like Hildegard of Bingen and Galen were like, lettuce chills the blood, dampens the mood, and shuts down the baby factory. It wasn't just infertility. They said lettuce caused laziness, melancholy, lack of virile essence. Whatever that means, but it sounds like something you'd buy in a questionable supplement store. Pop culture analogy? Imagine if Joe Rogan did a podcast episode titled, "The Leafy Lie, Why Lettuce is Killing Your Sperm Count." And suddenly every gym bro swore off Caesar salads for life. That was the vibe. But wasn't lettuce, like, healthy? Yes. Very. The irony is that lettuce was often recommended in Roman times as a libido booster. They even believed it helped male performance. So in just a few centuries, lettuce went from aphrodisiac to fertility nuke. It's the spinach to Satan pipeline. Theories flipped more times than a TikTok nutrition trend. And did anyone challenge it? Not really. Most people were just like, "You're telling me salad kills the mood? Sounds legit." And kept eating meat and bread like they were sponsored by medieval DoorDash. It wasn't until modern science stepped in, with actual microscopes and fertility studies, that lettuce was cleared of all charges. No, it doesn't destroy your sperm. No, it doesn't put your ovaries on ice. Yes, it's still kind of boring without dressing. The ironic twist? Some monks ate it on purpose to stay celibate. Lettuce became a spiritual salad bar for chastity. Imagine walking into a monastery dining hall, and every plate is just iceberg with a side of please God, no urges. So what did we learn? Medieval people turned salad into a moral and medical threat. Lettuce was villain-coded for no reason, just bad science and cold food phobia. Next time someone judges your lunch and says, "You're eating just lettuce?" Look them dead in the eye and say, "I'm staying fertile on purpose, unlike my 13th century ancestors." 10. You know that one awkward moment when you let one slip in a quiet room? Well, in 17th century France, that moment could get you accused of summoning the devil. Because yes, there was a time when farting was considered a legitimate sign of witchcraft. Forget flying brooms. Forget cauldrons. This was about suspicious toots. So what the actual flatulent hell happened? In France during the witch-hunting frenzy of the 1600s, literally anything unusual could be blamed on sorcery. Cursed crops? Witch. Weird dreams? Witch. That one guy who sneezed and didn't say bless you? Definitely a witch. And in at least one documented case, a man was accused of being possessed. Because he passed gas uncontrollably. You fart? You're either lactose intolerant or Satan's wind instrument. Yes, they held a real court hearing. The French clergy actually investigated whether evil spirits were behind the man's unnatural emissions. They even considered exorcism. Because apparently, no one stopped to ask, "Hey, what if he just had too much cheese?" Spoiler, it's France. He definitely had too much cheese. Why did they think this was magical? Because flatulence equals unseen force. And if something couldn't be explained and smelled demonic, it was probably hell's air freshener. Also, in religious logic, your body was a temple, and anything unclean was a sign of spiritual rot. So loud, sudden, room-clearing gas? Clearly a demonic disturbance. Pop culture analogy? This is like if Harry Potter got expelled for suspicious wind in the Great Hall. Or if The Exorcist had a deleted scene where they fight demons with gas X. And let's be real, if TikTok existed back then, hashtag possessed but gassy would have trended hard. The ironic twist? In later centuries, doctors figured out the poor guy probably just had IBS or some digestive issue. But medieval courts didn't do medical diagnostics, they did vibes and screaming. So this man was nearly labeled a dark sorcerer. For what was basically a lactose issue and a bad day. Oh, and it's not just France. Throughout Europe, bodily functions were often linked to sin, spirits, or curses. Burping equals gluttony. Sneezing equals soul leakage. Farting equals demonic Morse code. Imagine being spiritually profiled by your intestines. So what did we learn? In the 1600s, your digestive tract could get you excommunicated. And courts were out here launching full investigations over suspicious poots. History isn't just wars and kings, sometimes, it's a guy who farted too much and got labeled a heretic. So next time you rip one in public, just say, relax. It's not witchcraft. I just had beans. 11. You know that whole shoot for the stars and land among the fireworks thing? Well, ancient Chinese alchemists were literally trying to make immortality potions in gold. And instead, they invented something way cooler and way louder. Gunpowder. Yep, one of the most important inventions in human history was basically an accidental chemistry fail. Or as I like to call it, oops. All boom. Let's break this wild experiment down. Sometime around the 9th century, Taoist alchemists in China were on a holy mission. Create the elixir of eternal life. They wanted to live forever, become divine, and possibly flex on death itself. Because if you're going to do science in ancient China, might as well shoot for God mode. So they mixed stuff like sulfur, charcoal, saltpeter, aka potassium nitrate, hoping to unlock the chemical gates to heaven. Instead, they lit the lab on fire. Imagine the scene. Master Wei, does this mixture make you immortal? Bang. No, but now you're deaf and hairless. At one point, the recipe was literally described in old texts as a substance that will smoke and flash and burn your hands and face. And still, they kept going. Because early scientists had zero chill. Pop culture analogy? This is like trying to make a gluten-free cake and accidentally inventing C4. Or like Elon Musk trying to cure traffic and building a flamethrower instead. Wait, that actually happened. It's the most iconic wrong project, right outcome since someone left milk out too long and invented cheese. What happened next? Once they realized they had something violently useful, the Chinese were like, okay, so maybe it doesn't make you immortal. But it could definitely make your enemies mortal. Thus began the militarization of fireworks. They started packing the powder into fire arrows, bombs, rockets, and, eventually, guns. It didn't take long before every army from Beijing to Baghdad was obsessed with that sweet, smoky black powder. And here's the ironic twist. The alchemists were trying to extend life, and instead invented one of the most effective tools for ending it. Talk about a full-circle facepalm. It's like looking for the fountain of youth and finding a grenade launcher. Did they realize their mistake? Yes and no. Some kept searching for immortality while also selling gunpowder on the side. Because if your miracle potion doesn't work, you might as well monetize the explosion. It's the ultimate pivot to video moment in ancient R&D history. So what did we learn? Sometimes, science doesn't go as planned. But it still changes the world. Ancient Chinese alchemists aimed for philosopher's gold. And instead gave us fireworks, guns, and 4th of July. So next time someone says, there's no such thing as a happy accident, you can reply, Gunpowder says hi and then explodes. 12. You know that thick, delicious glob of ketchup you squirt on fries? Well, imagine being an 18th century American and looking at a tomato like it was a biohazardous hand grenade. Because for a while, people believed tomatoes were straight up poisonous. Then, plot twist, a few years later they were selling ketchup in pharmacies. As medicine. Because why not turn your fry dip into a cure-all? So what made them hate tomatoes? Blame the rich people's plates. In the 1700s, aristocrats used fancy pewter dishware loaded with lead. When tomatoes, naturally acidic, hit those plates, the acid leached the lead into the food. People ate the tomato, got sick, maybe died. And assumed the tomato was the killer, not the literal toxic metalware. That's like drinking bleach from a gold goblet and blaming the lemon juice. So what did they call tomatoes? Poison apples. Which sounds like a goth band but was actually a nickname grounded in complete culinary paranoia. They were seen as dangerous, suspicious, even demonic. One newspaper claimed eating tomatoes could corrupt the blood and inflame the brain. Basically, people thought marinara sauce would give you rabies and a personality disorder. And how did ketchup sneak into this? In the 1830s, an enterprising physician named Dr. John Cook Bennett came along and said, "Actually, tomatoes are amazing. Let's turn them into medicine." He claimed ketchup could treat diarrhea, indigestion, rheumatism, probably heartbreak if you squint hard enough. It was bottled and sold at pharmacies as a miracle elixir. Tomato pills were even patented. It was basically Big Pharma meets Big Spaghetti. Pop culture analogy? This is like if people thought avocados were toxic, then rebranded guac as a prescription drug. Or if Starbucks started selling frappuccinos as asthma treatments. Honestly, not far off. So what changed public opinion? Marketing. Science. And one dude allegedly eating an entire tomato in front of a horrified crowd just to prove it wasn't lethal. He didn't die. People gasped. Tomatoes got a redemption arc. And the next thing you know? Everyone's bottling ketchup like it's snake oil. Except it tasted good. The ironic twist? Ketchup was sold as medicine before it became a condiment. America literally medicated with tomatoes before putting them on burgers. Fast forward to now. We drown nuggets in it and argue online about whether it belongs on eggs. We've gone full circle, from fear, to faith, to fries. So what did we learn? Humans are dumb, then smart, then dumb again, especially when food is involved. Tomatoes went from lethal red orbs of death to miracle drug to everyone's favorite sidekick in the fridge door. So next time you hit a ketchup packet too hard, just whisper. You used to be a threat to the elite. Now you're stuck on a hot dog. How far you've fallen. 13. You've heard of Cold War arms races, nukes, spies, moon landings, right? Now add Frankenstein tech to the mix, because during the Soviet Union's weirdest era, scientists actually tried to bring dead people back to life, using radio waves. Yup. Not a movie plot. Not a bad Netflix pitch. An actual Soviet experiment that said, screw CPR. Let's zap corpses with radio static and hope for a miracle. So, what was the plan here? Meet Sergei Brukhanenko, Soviet scientist and part-time mad genius. In the 1930s, he developed a machine called the autojector, basically a heart-lung machine that could pump blood into dead bodies. Then he thought, you know what this needs? Radio waves. Maybe, the dead just need better reception. We've gone from medical innovation to zombie FM. And it gets darker. Brukhanenko performed experiments on dogs, decapitating them, and using his machine to keep their heads alive, blinking, licking, reacting, all while detached. It's horrifying. It's real. It's archived Soviet science. This wasn't fringe, this was state-sponsored what if? With no ethical breaks. You thought Cold War tension was bad? Try explaining this at dinner. So how do radio waves come in? Soviet researchers believed that radio frequencies could stimulate brain activity, even after death. They theorized that life functions weren't gone, just turned off, and maybe, just maybe, a strong enough signal could flip the switch back on. Kind of like rebooting a human router. We've lost the soul signal. Someone aimed the antenna at his aura. Pop culture comparison? This is basically Stranger Things meets Soviet Mythbusters, except instead of testing myths, they were trying to resuscitate Lenin with a car battery and a Walkman. Imagine a Soviet lab blasting static over corpses and calling it progress. It sounds like a Nine Inch Nails album, but it was very real. Did it work? Short answer, nope. Long answer, they got some spooky reflexes. Twitches. Movements. Blinks. But no one came back to life, and eventually the program was, quietly shut down. Probably after someone said, guys, this is creepy even for us. No zombies. No reboots. Just a pile of notes labeled "Do not show the West." The ironic twist? Today, we are using electrical impulses to restart hearts, stimulate brains, and restore some motor function. So while the Soviets didn't crack resurrection, they were weirdly ahead in thinking the body might be turn-on-able. But also, they electrocuted dog heads. So we're gonna file that one under horrifying but historically important. So what did we learn? The Soviet Union once tried to resurrect the dead using radio waves. Because in their mind, death was just bad Wi-Fi. It didn't work. But it proves that even global superpowers are just one bizarre idea away from becoming a low-budget horror movie. So next time your Bluetooth glitches, just say, "Don't worry. The Soviets tried to raise the dead with this stuff. I'm sure it's fine."